Okay, we are back with more Script Camp. This is writing a sci-fi TV show. Thanks for joining us, whether you are on our Discord channel, which is the main home base, or you're watching on our other sites, our other platforms like YouTube or Twitch or Twitter or things like this. We're glad to have you. Thanks for coming by. This is a free public event that's open to everyone and covers a lot of the basics of TV show, big idea, and zeroing in on the clarity of your premise. And we will have some time to offer some feedback on your guys' premises for sci-fi shows today as well. So we're part of Skill Camp, which includes many other servers besides just Script Camp. Script Camp is our biggest server with more than 5,000 members, but we are a community that includes things like Word Camp, which focuses on novel writing and holds novel classes 12 to 2 on Saturdays. We have Film Camp, which is focused on filmmaking, Code Camp on working on coding, and plenty of other ones, including Game Camp, which is a newer one, where we have game design meetups every Wednesday at 6. So there's a server for every skill. Not every skill, but server for lots of skills, and we're adding new ones all the time. We have some classes that are open to everybody, like these free ones, and like the first couple weeks of the most of the boot camp courses, but if you want to continue all the way through to the end and write an entire script in just 8 weeks for the feature, 6 weeks for the TV pilot, or 12 weeks for the novel, then you should make sure to sign up for membership. You can do that at scriptcamp.net. Get access to get instant access to all of our classes, workshops, and events. Or you can get just one class on its own at scriptcamp.net/classes. But you should sign up for membership because that includes access to everything on every server. So, do I have the upcoming schedule in here? No, I guess I don't. Okay, so just a quick word about me, anyone who doesn't know me already. I am primarily a feature writer working in the horror, thriller, and action space, most recently having set up an action IP in London. But the scope of my interest goes much beyond just those three genres. I'm into lots of stuff, and I have written a bit of everything from westerns to kung fu to musicals and things like this, so I adore sci-fi, and a lot of my favorite books and movies and things fall under this umbrella. So I do the boot camp for TV and film, and also the novel boot camps on Saturdays, and the Writers Labs, which there are 2 of those a week. You can come by with questions and topics you'd like to hear more about, and up to 5 pages of anything that you're working on. Okay, let's just get right into it. So we're looking at sci-fi TV shows today. So we're starting with just some practical steps on how to write a sci-fi pilot. And then we are moving from there to the big idea, and the idea of scope and scale. So figuring out what size of idea does my show want to encompass, which ideas are going to be suited to different formats of show, both in terms of continuity, genre, structure, everything else. We can look at some sci-fi topics and subgenres and some potential jumpstart exercises for different show premises. If we have time today, I also wanted to perhaps do a new exercise where we'll mash up several different real show premises. So we'll do Rick and Morty meets Predator. Okay, what would that be? I guess that's like there's a little predator going around with the adult predator hunting people all over the galaxy. They're kind of like a mentor-mentee kind of situation. Is that what that is? I don't know. So those are always kind of fun where you have to just get 2 titles and think of how could we combine those 2, and those become the comps of whatever it is that we're writing. Okay. So we'll do that today if there's time, but besides that, we will always make time for student loglines and pitches. So if you have a concept for a sci-fi show, I'd be working on that today and have that open in your other tab. And be prepared to ask questions about that or to speak aloud about it, because it's always easiest to give feedback when you can answer questions verbally and unmute your mic and speak out loud and interact. We can still see comments from the other sites like YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, but it sometimes takes a little longer to see them. So join us on Discord. You get that link at scriptcamp.net. Scriptcamp.net. So just click up here to log in, and you'll get our Discord page. All right, so let's just go right into it. Let's start off by just listing off a bunch of your favorite sci-fi shows. Let's mostly use the text chat for this, and later we might draw back from this if we are using our mashup, doing our sort of mashup exercise. But let's hear it. So what are some of your guys' favorites sci-fi TV shows? I'm seeing some in the chat already. Thanks for this. We have Devs from Luke. Yep, that was a miniseries on FX that premiered a couple years ago. Really liked it as well. Dollhouse, I only ever saw the pilot, but that was a Joss Whedon sort of like post-Firefly show, I believe, like the 2006, 7, 8 kind of era that got tragically canceled too soon. I think it was also on Fox. Battlestar Galactica, yep, my whole family used to all watch that together. Every Thursday night, you used to be able to see Battlestar Galactica, The Office, Lost, Scrubs, and My Name is Earl in the same day, like brand new episodes of all those things. It was an insane lineup during that time. But yeah, love Battlestar. Farscape, SG1, SGU, LEXX. The only one I don't know there is LEXX. What's that one, Charlie? You'll have to fill us in. Unless I'll guess it. I don't think I will. Caprica, is a spin-off of Battlestar Galactica. Android Kikader, the animation. I have no idea what that is, Ace. Maybe that's like an anime or something like that. Red Dwarf, Dirk Gently. Alright, great. Good mix of shows from everybody. Thank you for this. LEXX's 90s prisoner sci-fi. It used to come on late. Cool. Okay, sounds neat. Never heard of that one. And then, of course, we have the many different Star Wars and Star Trek shows that are so popular. We may not even need to list those, but many people grow up watching one or the other. Obviously, Star Wars has only been TV within the past 5 to 8 years. I can't remember when The Mandalorian premiered, but it has mostly been a movie franchise. But nowadays, there's plenty of Star Wars to be seen and plenty of Marvel. There's so much sci-fi in Marvel. I think there's a lot of sci-fi mixed in with many other popular genres out there. Anybody remember a show called Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd Century? That was like one of my favorites as a kid. It was exactly what it sounds like. The pitch is pretty clear, right? Sherlock Holmes gets like Futurama into the future. He gets like frozen or something, and then he gets revived in the year 2200 or 2100. There's flying cars everywhere, and we're doing Sherlock Holmes mysteries, but in the future. Easy pitch. Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century. So you can see how just that aspect of one thing meets one other thing makes a really clear way into presenting an idea. So, like, if you start with your comps, then you're usually going to pick a TV show meets another TV show. But one of the other TV shows might be, it could be a movie, or it could be a board game, or it could be a Broadway show, or something else if that helps you kind of clarify what it is that you're going for. So, always use those comps as a good starting place. So, we have to start by finding the topic and big idea, and maybe your topic or big idea or maybe your initial concept even comes from the comps, like I just mentioned. It could be that, to begin with, you're like, I just would love to see something that's like, I don't know, let's say Alien meets Friends. Okay, so we're doing like a sitcom in a space station, and the characters are trying to deal with an alien infestation or something like that, right? So we could start there and just use that to help zero in on, okay, what would be the very basics of this? What is the tone of this? What is the world of this? What is the essential appeal? So from there, it will help you find your topic, and it will help you start to zero in on the big idea, capital B, capital I. Big idea referring in this case to what is the central technological conceit or premise that the series revolves around. Not every single series revolves around just one thing, but it's helpful, especially in terms of pitching and understanding that just basic concept of your show. If there is that central conceit, and that might be anything from the severance procedure from the show Severance, or that might be like something that can be summed up in just the opening couple lines of the intro text. Cylons were created by man. They rebelled. They evolved. Something like that, just a couple sentences that boils down what is the buy-in for this story, what is that premise that I'm going to have to accept in order for the rest of it to make sense. That's kind of your big idea. The topic or the subject matter is sort of the world that we're in. So the combination might be something like Minority Report, which is we're in the world of criminal justice or law enforcement, but the big idea is pre-crime, which is this idea that we have some people that can scientifically predict the future somehow, and then as a result we can predict crimes before they happen and arrest those people before they commit them. So subject matter and big idea are linked, but they are not the same thing. So once you have just that general sense of maybe it's a comp between this and this, you have the subject matter and you have the big idea in mind if there is one central big idea. Though that central big idea might contain some smaller ones, like if it all takes place on a spaceship in the future, then we would assume certain other technological leaps are included in that. In any case, you're going to want to determine the scope and continuity format of your show. The scope being essentially how big is this story, or is it a series of small stories? That's the question at the heart of TV continuity. Is this like a long movie that we need to move through chapter by chapter in order to understand every piece of it and see how everything fits together and see early setups be paid off way down the line? Or is this the kind of show in which we reset every episode? Futurama. Do we need long story arcs? No, not at all. Rick and Morty. Do we need them? No. See, cartoons and procedurals will often have this kind of thing of the week aspect to them where the show, we don't need to watch them in any given order. You can pick up any episode anywhere and understand what's going on, at least basically, like characters might change gradually over time. But in any case, the status quo show is all about getting back to the way things were. So that is how you use scope to help determine determine the continuity format. And from there, you're going to start to zero in on your story engine. The story engine just being an amalgamation of elements that seems to generate fuel for many different stories, either within the same setup or many different stories that will advance a larger story. So that it seems to have much more ground to cover, more mysteries yet to solve, more antagonists left to defeat, more monsters to hunt, more debates to be won, more, I don't know, dates to go on, whatever it is that's happening in the show. We should understand by the end, why is there more of this? Does it feel like I want to get to the next episode, or does it feel like everything just wrapped up so neatly that there's no story left to tell? So that's how we can use the story engine and continuity format to get closer to chipping away at this big block of that surrounds the statue of your TV idea. From there, you're going to be able to start brainstorming characters as you work on your series and pilot loglines. At least your central character, or your protagonist, your antagonist, and central relationship are usually going to be the three that you work out first, but maybe you're coming up with ideas for a bigger ensemble, in which case you have lots of different characters in mind. If you're doing, Futurama has what, like 2-3 dozen characters probably, at the very least, but we can keep them all straight and we can pair them up in different combinations in different episodes. You just have to balance having enough characters to fuel the story engine with that concept of too many would overwhelm us. We can't remember every single one. So you're working on your story engine, which there's no one single way to express that. There's not like a format to write what the story engine is. But again, it is just sort of that confluence of different factors that are going to sum up to clarify how does the story go on. And from there, you work on your series and pilot loglines. And those are both one sentence each. And those are to explain what the story is about and keep you on track while you're writing it. So it's helpful to have that before you're even writing pages. The logline is a single sentence that expresses usually who's the main character, what are they trying to do, what's standing in the way, what are the stakes. So we get whom we're following. We understand the world that we're in. If it is a separate, different world than our own, we might definitely tell us what the big idea is, if that's core to the show's premise. And then on top of that, what's standing in the way, what are the stakes, why must they act now, things like this. So the series and pilot loglines are two distinct ideas. One is series is telling us about the overall trajectory of the entire show, or the types of situations that the characters are getting into. When a lazy delivery boy from the year 1999 is transported into the far future, he joins up with a team of eccentric delivery drivers, essentially, to deliver stuff throughout the galaxy. There's Futurama. So we have main character in this situation or this world. This has kicked off their story, and now they have to blank before blank. That would be the sort of higher stakes premise version of it. Or you can use the status quo version, which is now he works as a blank, and every week they do blank, which might be, and now he hunts monsters for the government. Or now they must attempt to escape this prison in their minds. Something like that, right? Like it's a status quo show logline is going to be clarifying how there are going to be many more episodes within this setup, but they're not going to be necessarily advancing anywhere. We're not following a grander arc. We're not building to something. But then you have to make sure, the challenge of that is you have to make sure that those episodes then wrap up pretty well and don't have any loose threads, as opposed to premise storytelling. So premise being the opposite of status quo, premise refers to premise shows are ones that unveil like a long movie. There's many chapters that you have to get through in order to understand what's going on, and we can wait much longer between the setups and the payoffs. And you don't have to tie up everything with a bow. In fact, at the end of these pilots, a premise pilot, you can't tie everything up with a bow. It can't all be concluded. In fact, we have to have a trajectory that's compelling enough, or maybe a question that's urgent enough to answer that we feel that we have to watch the next one right away, because we have to know what happens next. In status quo shows, we don't wonder what happens next, because there is no next, where next week will be a new scenario. I hope that distinction is super clear. So once you've got your series and pilot loglines worked out, you're going to break your pilot into beats. And beats are these sort of structural tentpoles that make up the entire story. They are going to be things like the big turning points, so the act breaks, those cliffhangers that help propel us through the episode. It's going to include things like the midpoint and the all is lost, which are both structural moments that are great for raising the stakes and for pushing your character in a new direction. That's usually what these turning points are for. They're going to be when your character changes direction, changes motivation, or it could be that they redouble their efforts or they continue in the same direction but now with a greater sense of urgency or cost. Because we're always turning up the heat on the protagonist. We're not really making the journey get easier for them as it goes through, or as it goes along. So it should feel that goal, especially in the pilot logline, is particularly urgent and relevant to the characters. So we have a sense of motivation and stakes, as well as understanding just what we're watching people do. Okay, so we've got your beats, which are going to help clarify where the major events are going to fall in the story, and those will be either within your 30 to 35 page range for your half-hour show, or your 60 to 65 page range for your full hour. But you'll have a list of like most of the major scenes. It doesn't have to be absolutely everything, but you're going to understand the function of those scenes and how they're fulfilling their structural roles. And from there, you can expand to either one sheet or scene cards. I recommend doing both if you haven't before, because it's a good practice to learn how to write one sheets, and one sheets are so important. It's like one complete prose document in one page, 12-point single-space font that takes us through the entire story from beginning to end. And would have to be readable by other people. That's the difference between a one-sheet and an outline. In an outline, you're writing it primarily for yourself or for your writing partner, whereas in a treatment or in a one-sheet, you are taking us through the whole story in such a way that you could turn this into someone as a deliverable, and they would be able to read the entire thing. A deliverable being just any document that you write up and turn in as a screenwriter. So you have to make sure it is readable by the untrained eye, and there's no weird shorthand or jargon or any shortcuts. A one sheet should be readable by anyone. So you can do that first. If you don't do the one sheet, you could just go right to scene cards. It's up to you. So scene cards are going to be a more detailed plan. It's like an extension and expansion of the story beats, where you are writing about a full paragraph for every scene, as well as the page numbers that scene is projected to take place on. So that way you're able to plan out with such a granular focus that you understand what happens on page 1, what happens on pages 2 to 3, what happens on page 5, etc. So you're building out the plan. You're basically writing already. This feels more like writing. This is the heavy lifting, is figuring out what happens and where. And it's supposed to help you so that by the time you actually start those pages, you don't have to worry about what's supposed to happen, or how do I get to the next moment, or what happens next. You have all that worked out, and it just comes down to executing it. So you're trying to sort of divide that process of coming up with the idea and plotting and planning and then actually writing. We're trying not to do those at the same time, especially if you want to work in TV writers' rooms. And then once you've got your scene cards outlined, you're ready to go to pages. So you go to pages, which just means download your screenwriting software and start writing. Start writing the scenes, keep track of your progress in the scene card outline. I usually use a system of highlights. Green means it's all finished and does not need to be changed. Yellow means that I'm still working on it, or it has some placeholders in there. And red means I've deleted this from the episode. I just leave it on the outline for a little while to remind myself what was deleted, or to perhaps bring it back if I need to. But in any case, the sort of red, yellow, green stoplight system is a great way to mark up your outlines. And then you're writing pages. So I recommend writing about 20 to 25 pages a week. So that's going to be 4 or 5 pages a day if you're just writing on weekdays. And given that, you will be done within 2 weeks if it's a half-hour pilot, and about 3 weeks if it's an hour long. So you've got 4 weeks of planning. Between 2 and 4 weeks of execution means that you can finish a pilot script in about 8 weeks total. Seem doable? I hope so. Let's take questions on the basics of writing a pilot, these practical steps, before we go any further. Okay, no questions. Let's keep going. Alright, so let's go into big idea. So, big idea refers to that central speculative element of the story. It's not to say it's the only speculative element. Think of a show like Star Trek, where we have teleportation, time travel, alternate dimensions, highly advanced medicine. All those things are kind of wrapped up in the big idea of, we're traveling on an exploration, like a military type ship, going from galaxy to galaxy solving problems. I know the Enterprise is not technically a military ship, and Roddenberry originally had some concerns about militaristic portrayals of Starfleet in the show, but it has missiles and bombs and stuff. It's like it is heavily armed and armored when it needs to be. So in any case, the travels of the crew of the Enterprise are kind of the central big idea of Star Trek. It's like, what if we had a big spaceship and we could go around the galaxy basically being heroes, spreading democracy and doing the right thing. It's the American way. We go from galaxy to galaxy, helping people out and spreading our way of life to some extent. I guess they are trying to... It is the Prime Directive that they don't interfere with other species, but at the end of the day, they're an extension of Starfleet, and they're building goodwill for their, the Federation. So in any case, a big idea can encompass smaller ideas too. It's not that there can only be one laser gun in your show. It's just that it's that central speculative element that everything else kind of branches off of. It sets your world apart from reality and guides what your characters are doing or pursuing. It often also comprises a central element of the threat or obstacle. It doesn't need to, but it can. It can also comprise the way your characters most overcome that obstacle, or both. So we are using sci-fi to accomplish our goals. We are in a sci-fi based world, or we are facing threats that are linked to speculative elements too. So we're asking, what if this thing existed, or what if technology advanced to this point? What conflict would it create or solve? That's kind of the core question of a lot of sci-fi. What problems would this create? And it could be that you extrapolate and take these situations and technologies far into the future, or put them in extremely bizarre, specific scenarios in which their flaws come to light in some way. Or you can focus more on how we live now, and you would just limit the technology and set it in a more grounded, near-futuristic world or something like this. It's entirely up to you. There's also other options that you have stories that might take place in the past, sci-fi like alternate history, in which we imagine what if things went differently in history and key events transpired down an alternate pathway, and we sort of inspect the ramifications of such changes in shows like For All Mankind, where we ask, what if the Russians got to the moon first? And as a result of that, with many seasons of TV, including a spin-off in the works, so clearly a lot would be different. Okay, so, a big idea. Altered Carbon's big idea is sleeves. Humans can transfer their mind between artificial bodies, or artificially grown bodies. The topic is consciousness upload and posthumanism. I mentioned the Minority Report example earlier. Ready Player One the topic is VR social media, but the big idea is the Oasis, this worldwide metaverse thing that everyone is plugged into, or everyone can access, and it sort of is like a global internet that you can experience in very realistic virtual reality. Severance, the topic is corporate work life, but the big idea is the severance itself, this procedure to bifurcate an employee's mind into two distinct halves, a work version and an outside version, which have separate memories that are spatially dictated, as they explain it on the show, meaning when you are at work, then your mind swaps over to your work self, and your work self has no memory of anything outside of work. When you leave work, the mind takes control of your body that exists outside of work, and you don't know what happens inside. That's the basics, and the show takes that central big idea and extrapolates a ton of interesting ramifications and questions, philosophical and ethical arguments, big swings at topics like consciousness and who are we, and like what does it mean to be you, identity, personality, work-life balance is like where we sort of start, and it's a dark satire about that concept, but from that big idea we blossom into many other interesting concepts that can be explored all throughout. And like a really strong big idea for a sci-fi show will feel as if that is baked into it. It's inherent. There's enough here just in the concept of separating your mind from your out of work mind from your work mind. There's enough there for hours and hours of TV, and enough to justify, you're trying to, you have to have a strong premise, because you're asking for a TV show, you're asking for potentially hundreds of millions of dollars to create a company that will employ hundreds of people for years. So that's a big deal, and you have to have a rock-solid premise at the core before you're going to get to the point where you're actually pitching or making shows. Okay, that's neither here nor there. I hope to just clarify for the moment how big idea works and how it differs from just the topic or subject matter. Some shows in the smaller scope do include these kind of self-contained speculative elements, while others explore monumental premises that take years to fully unravel. We're still learning things by the last season of Battlestar Galactica. We're still learning new stuff about the Cylons. As opposed to a show like Black Mirror, where within one single episode, this anthology format, in a self-contained story, we just are exploring as much as we can of that one big idea as quickly as possible. So we might call them small ideas to some extent. And even within Black Mirror, there are some episodes that sort of jump between a couple, like the Black Museum episode, where it's sort of just like, hey, here's a messed up idea, and we just explore that really fully for about 10 minutes, then we move on to the next one. But then it all comes together and makes sense at the end. It's a great episode. So these shows, these smaller scope shows are going to focus on a single speculative concept per episode. The premise is explored fully within the confines of that episode, whether it's anthological or not. It could be one of those shows where like a new wacky thing of the week happened here in our town of Eureka, and now we have to resolve it, and we explore all the ramifications of that, but it's not going to come back. We don't have to worry about how that's going to haunt us later down the line. So here's some examples of smaller scope shows. I've mentioned 2 of these already, Black Mirror and Eureka. Black Mirror being anthological, in which we explore the ramifications of technological concepts within a single episode. Eureka is less realistic, or not that Black Mirror is that realistic, but it's much lighter, I guess I would say. Wacky science experiments gone wrong type scenarios. It's almost like Jimmy Neutron for adults. Each week, the town's inventors create a new chaotic challenge for the sheriff, who's this fish out of water everyman that he has to then resolve. So in that case, it's kind of like, I'm not the sci-fi, the main character is not the sci-fi element in and of themselves. They are in a science fiction world, but they are out of place there. You could do the opposite too, where we're doing like an Alf being the speculative element of Alf, and he's being placed into a more grounded or realistic world. Better Off Ted was another sort of thing of the week, kind of wacky Eureka-style show where we have comedic corporate science run amok, with each episode poking fun at a new tech innovation or moral dilemma, sort of a screwball comedy type tone. It felt very old, like along the lines of stuff like His Girl Friday, very old-fashioned repartee. It was a stronger show than most people gave it credit for. It got canceled very soon. Early X-Files is also Monster of the Week format, focusing on isolated paranormal incidents that are resolved within the episode, though I'm sorry, my slide cut off there. But later episodes do expand the scope and sort of present an overarching narrative, and it's like, oh, there really were aliens, Mulder was right. And then there are various culminations in this. There's like several different conclusions to X-Files, so let's not worry too much about the continuity there. But you get the idea that small scope, small scale, it works best with anthology, but it doesn't have to be anthology. It could just be that your show takes place in such a world where we are able to explore a new science-based premise every week. That could happen. Okay, so smaller shows are often based in status quo, but even if not, our expectations do sort of reset between episodes, meaning that we're going to be open to a new concept each time we turn it on. We don't care too much about our older concepts that have already been introduced. You don't have to pay them off. In terms of large scope, these shows present these massive overarching premises or mysteries that slowly unspool over several seasons. Shows like Westworld or Lost, which are both that have that mystery box element of every time we solve one question, well, we run into 3 new questions. That's a really compelling format that works for large scope shows, but you can't really do mystery box on small scope because mystery box is dependent on this idea of we've solved some of the mystery, but not all of it. And if you open the box too soon, then you ruin the whole thing. So, yeah, mystery box only works well in big format. I can maybe think of a few isolated examples to the contrary, but in any case, Lost is that sort of classic mystery box show. This complex narrative involving time travel and plenty of other speculative elements too, but they're all unified by this concept of this island. So a lot of the weird stuff happens on the island, or maybe because of the island, or maybe because of the corporations that have kind of colonized the island, but also just maybe because of the island itself being mysterious and sort of magical, sort of not. The mysteries of the island are slowly revealed, with each answer leading to many, many new questions, some of which get resolved. So yeah, complex core ideas require lots of episodes to dive into, and we really want to, especially in the world of sci-fi TV, dive very deeply into the impact of your big idea on identity, power structure, the nature of humanity, love, like all these things that really are relevant to humans now and always. We want to see the big idea actually explore big ideas. Or you use your central sci-fi fun big idea to explore, deeper issues that are connected to our status as human beings in modern society, in whatever way. Okay, so shows with large scope, just to sum up, are ideal for long-form storytelling as the central concept needs a lot of time and space to fully reveal itself and unveil all of its ramifications. So it's best for narratives in which our understanding of that central tech will evolve over time. By the end of Battlestar or Westworld, we're basically watching whole different shows because our understanding of the central speculative big ideas have changed so much. Now we're just like, we look back at the early seasons, we're like, I had no idea what was even going on here, did I? So much context you can add. Okay, any questions on scope or scale of your ideas? Okay, if there's no questions, we'll keep going. There's a lot of people here, but it's a quiet group today. So we're looking at topics, and there's always more topics. There's no way that I've included absolutely everything. But you can kind of arrange them in some sort of rough order of, how well explored they are. So I've tried to place the more explored things at the top, aliens, AI, time travel, dystopia being among the most common ones. And then towards the bottom, I've tried to keep them a little bit more on the obscure side, so things like scientific predestination, like Minority Report or devs. We have brought up both of those today. Uplifting, memory or mind manipulation, cyberspace, virus and germs, things like this. Obviously, these change over time. These change based on current events. These change based on recent hits. These change based on so many factors. It's basically like the weather. You can't really predict or count on predicting what the audience wants to read about. But you can expect that stuff that is on the cutting edge, as in new technologies that we've yet to see a ton of stories about. Like, there was just a huge $3 million spec sale yesterday on it sounded to me like a contained drama or contained sci-fi thriller that revolves around the concept of AI. So writing something in the AI space, clearly everyone's talking about it. If you have some really clever idea on AI and are able to capitalize that in a script, then absolutely do. And always be keeping, as a sci-fi writer, you should always be reading science and tech news, keeping up with what is going on in the world in terms of technology, the advancements that people have made, the things that we're speculating about, the things that we're afraid of. Got to keep track of all of these things and be able to write in such a way that you're engaging with not only stuff that you find interesting, but you're trying to engage with stuff that you think everyone will find interesting. Oh, I just got really lightheaded for a second. I'm going to drink some water. Okay, anything I've missed on this list? Any topics that I've not covered? Roman says robots. Oh, we have AI. That's the second one on here. Speculative nonfiction books are a great resource to get up to speed on sci-fi gobbledygook. What is speculative nonfiction?
So there's scientists, right? And then there are science journalists. And so science journalists, they take very advanced techno information and boil it down to the more like the more like interesting element. So even though their academic acumen, like the math isn't that great, they can still boil down the core concepts because they interview smart people, and then they boil it down to a book like The Two Moons of Earth. Right? It's a person taking what happens if if the Earth had two moons, and it explores every avenue of it and asks like 30 scientists. So you have very, very good ideas about exactly what's going to happen.
Okay.
And so, yeah, they haven't done it for AI yet. So the more new the technology is, the less books there are.
Sure. That's interesting. Yeah, I had never heard it described in those terms, but that makes sense. Just like type of journalism or nonfiction where we spool out the ramifications of things and approach them very factually and try to get everything as correct as possible. I would read that too. Luke suggests, what about utopian sci-fi? Yeah, that's a good point. I guess to me, it is not defined as a genre very well outside of maybe solar punk. And solar punk most people have not heard of or read, I guess. Does somebody have an example of utopian sci-fi? Is Star Trek utopian? Go ahead, Luke.
Star Trek probably counts.
So so the fact that it's utopian would mean that we are in a society that has worked out all of its problems, right?
Pretty much.
And as a result of that, I guess that just doesn't, like most sort of stories that take place in utopias are usually ones where it is revealed to be a false utopia. Because if it was really a perfect society, then why would this problem exist? But I'd love to see it. I just can't think of any examples of it. I guess we that would probably be more in the realm of sci-fi short stories currently. But I'd love to see it. If somebody can list one off for us, then please do.
I'll try to find examples besides Star Trek.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I'm seeing a suggestion of The Giver. Was The Giver utopian? I kind of thought that was dystopian. Dystopian novel is the first description of it. Yeah. How is it utopian? Society has taken away pain and strife. Oh, okay, yeah, this is a false utopia. Exactly. Most of them fall in this range, where it will be a society that claims to be a utopia, but in fact, in reality, we can see the problems with it pretty clearly. We've taken away pain and strife by converting to sameness. Right, but then usually the main character will end up clashing with that societal goal in some way.
Did you have post-human sci-fi on that list?
I guess I don't. Let's add it right now. And can you give some examples?
A lot of biopunk falls into this category. It's sort of humans have advanced or evolved to the point where they're no longer humans, and we live in a sort of a post-human age.
Okay, right, yeah, I think Raised by Wolves.
It can be lots of things. It can be almost like gods and magic. It can be like merging of man with machine. Or it can just be humans don't exist anymore, and we're talking about, aliens or some robot civilization or something like that.
Wouldn't Planet of the Apes count as post-human?
A little bit.
They still have humans in Planet of the Apes. They're just not the dominant species, though. I guess that would be the distinction. They're just like a slave race, basically.
I think that's almost like pre-human because they're less advanced. So even though it's afterwards, it's sort of like before.
It's post and pre at the same time. That's so strange to think. Okay, thank you for the suggestions, guys. So in terms of TV, I think, or in terms of TV and movies, we're limited in what we can do. We can't do everything that novels and short stories can do. We can't do a Ray Bradbury, There Will Be Soft Rains, which for anyone who hasn't read it is a short story that pretty much has no characters in it, or There Will Come Soft Rains, I think it's called. There's no characters, it just sort of takes us around to different rooms of a smart house, and we slowly get the idea that the smart house is continuing to function even after, the bombs have fallen. It's kind of like Fallout. Like, we sort of just look at different functions of this house. You can't do that in movies and TV. You need characters. There's no way around it. We need characters, and you probably need human characters. There are, in terms of movies and shows, there's not a lot with just aliens. I could maybe see it, or just obviously just robots or just aliens. It could happen, but just almost every show has at least one human on there. Maybe you guys can think of a show with 0 humans on it.
Like I say, you could technically, though, use a short story like that to make a film or something, because they did that with All You Zombies and made the Predestination.
Yeah, you can always take an inspiration from a short story, or if you get an open writing assignment or something where you're supposed to adapt a short story, you have to make a lot of changes in order to make it work as a movie. So, yeah, that can be a good exercise as well. So I think in movies and TV we see these are the sort of genres that sci-fi pairs well with, or these are good lenses to view the sci-fi world with. So we have, or to sort of help calibrate and figure out what are the conflicts in this world, who are the characters, what are they trying to pull off. Horror and thriller, I think that we see a fair amount of this in terms of aliens or alien creatures, alien monsters, stuff like Guillermo del Toro's The Strain, which kind of approaches vampirism like a biological disease, and things like this. We have your Resident Evil, which had a TV show a couple years ago. Westworld has that kind of sci-fi thriller element to it, of these characters that are trapped in this simulation world trying to get out. The main characters being pretty much the robots in Westworld, at least in season 1. Space opera is going to fit under that action-adventure type of category. That's going to be your Star Trek, Expanse, and Doctor Who. Things where we have space travel, fleets of ships battling each other, Firefly brings that kind of like Western sensibility to the space opera, which is kind of cool to see. Mystery is one of the more common areas. Think of something like Dark or Severance, where the central big idea is also the source of its central guiding questions. So, in the Severance show, what is the company who does this Severance actually up to? Is the main question of the show. What are they doing? And why, of course. And then Dark is kind of like, where is this kid? Or when is this kid? Was he kidnapped? Or was he taken out of the time stream? There's a missing child case kind of at the center of a much, much more complicated mystery. And then we have things like drama, which would be stuff like Handmaid's Tale, Under the Dome, certain episodes of Black Mirror, in which we are following characters trying to resolve interpersonal issues, but on a backdrop of science fiction or by utilizing science fiction in their interactions somehow. San Junipero episode of Black Mirror is probably the most well-known version of this. It won an Emmy for Best Episode, so there you go. Okay, so that's just like the main genres. There's lots of other options here too. Sci-fi comedy, I think we see a fair amount of on TV. Everything we've mentioned, Alf and Futurama, and Rick and Morty and stuff like this. So it can just work quite well on TV. Some more subgenres, things like alternate history, Man in the High Castle, or Watchmen, where we imagine some things played out differently, and as a result, maybe they have advanced technology. Like, for instance, Man in the High Castle takes place in the 1960s, but they have sort of like supercomputers, because we're imagining the Nazis won World War II, and with their sort of science gone mad, they were able to reach certain benchmarks technologically sooner than we were in real life. Cyberpunk, everything from Altered Carbon to Upgrade, these are shows and movies that usually take place in futuristic, dystopian-ish settings, where the characters modify their bodies with technological implants, perhaps. Usually they revolve around characters on the fringes of those societies, so criminals living in the slums underneath the massive towers, things like this. Lots of specific tropes. Dystopia also has its own tropes that became kind of very intrinsically tied with YA, as of Hunger Games. So, although it doesn't have to be YA, Handmaid's Tale is an example of adult dystopia. But in any case, societies that are flawed or broken, and that usually have some technological aspect to their control, whether they keep everyone artificially drugged up so that they follow the edicts of society, like in Brave New World, or whether they sort everyone into some sort of caste system based on, I don't know, the color of their eyes or whatever. For a while, every young adult novel was just, in this messed up dystopia, people who can sing go in this society, but people that can't sing are known as the unsingers, or the unvoiced. I must rise up through the ranks of the unvoiced and take down the oppressive singing class. It's like every single dystopia was, they sort us into different blankety blank based on our blank. And obviously there were some big hits there. Not saying that can't work. We have farce, that would be just your silliness, your Bill and Ted, Hitchhiker's Guide, Rick and Morty a lot of the time. Wacky scenarios in which sci-fi is used for rule of funny, basically. You know, we might have an episode where your character clones himself. We may have an episode where your character zaps himself to another dimension, needs to get back home, or maybe he, doesn't want to go on a date, so he goes and he hides in space, or something like that, right? So there's unlimited sort of just funny, wacky scenarios that you might be able to derive from inspiration in the sci-fi world. Military sci-fi would be stuff like Edge of Tomorrow, Starship Troopers. Certain Star Wars shows have this vibe as well, but just the more grounded ones. And military so stuff like Rogue Squadron, or even the Clone Wars cartoons that don't focus on the Jedi as much. Those are going to have that military feel to them. They're going to be much more focused on winning wars, big battles, and you actually care about the type of guns that everyone's are using. Then you probably would be into military sci-fi. New weird is really hard to define, but this sort of falls into it's kind of adjacent to Lovecraftian science fiction, where we are like we're using sci-fi to explore strange and unknowable or not really comprehensible aspects of the world or of different dimensions. And there's an element of sort of surrealism or absurdism where just crazy stuff happens in new weird, and then it turns out it ends up being justified by science in some way. Maybe somebody else understands this one a little bit better. New weird is one I've never fully grasped entirely. We have a question, is Three Body Problem new weird? I actually don't know. I haven't read the books of Three Body Problem, and I've only seen the first season of the show, but possibly. It gets so crazy. It's definitely weird, even if not new weird. Luke says it's more hard sci-fi. Yeah, philosophical hard, all these things. It's a lot of stuff. And then we have your we mentioned cyberpunk, but steampunk is going to be this science fiction that's rooted in the past, where we imagine that your character... Whoa, what happened to my screen there? That was weird. We imagine that your it could be either due to alternate history, or it could be due to just the story taking place on a different planet or something like that, but the technology resembles Age of Industrial Revolution era steam tech and pistons and coal getting shoveled into stuff, but we combine that with futuristic elements like giant robots, spaceships that run on coal, that sort of thing. Arcane is probably one of the better known steampunk kind of shows on right now. Some genre terms and things to know about: FTL, cyberspace, uplifting. These are, we don't have to go over every single one of these, but these are all just things that can come up in sci-fi stories. And if you're... Sorry, let me fix the screen. And if your story is set in, like, far enough in the future, we will assume that some of these may have come to pass. And so that's how you can use the or the umbrella of the big idea to contain several smaller ideas. Like, if your story takes place in the year 2800, if it's like hundreds of years in the future, then pretty much you can have any of these things that you want, and more. We would be able to buy that humans have somehow developed psionics, which are like scientifically rooted psychic powers, basically. You may be in a world where the singularity is an afterthought. Yeah, of course humans and machines are completely equal, or have merged consciousness, or are, even living in parallel societies or something like that. Maybe nanotech is to the point where everybody has swarms of tiny robots that they can emit from their skin. Like, the farther in the future we are, the more you can bake into the premise. Which is not to say you should always pick the most distant possible future for your show just because it covers your most bases. Because the more distant that we get into the future, the more unrecognizable society kind of gets as well. And we would expect things to change more. Except if you're doing sort of an idiocracy kind of thing where the whole point is that we never learn. These are just useful premise jumpstarts. We can always go with I'm a cop or bounty hunter of X. And X in these cases is going to be your big idea. I do heists on X, or heists using X. I'm a lawyer or doctor who specializes in X. So let's just pick an easy one and think of a couple. How about aliens? I'm a cop for aliens. It's Men in Black. I'm a bounty hunter of aliens. Okay, so we're tracking down... It could be a bit like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but with aliens, right? There's aliens in disguise on Earth. We need to hunt them down and turn in the bounties. I do heists on aliens, or using aliens. Both of those are interesting, right? In different ways. We could do... I'm robbing spaceships. I'm like a space pirate, and I'm robbing other aliens of their goods. Or you could also do, like, I got an alien on my team who has the strongest grasp of technology I've ever met, so he can be the perfect hacker on my heist team. Lawyer for aliens, doctor for aliens. You can see how just these jumping off points, they make for a good start, and they just give you the basic ingredients that you'll be working with. Aliens were stolen and I must get them back. Wow, that's kind of funny. That's sort of like, I was going to say almost like, that's the government's point of view in E.T., right? They're like, oh no, they took our alien, we got to get him. An alien was used to kill someone. Who did it? Why? And how do we stop them? This small town is concealing aliens. I'm in love with alien, but I must overcome the blank which is keeping us apart. The law, which is made that says that humans and aliens can't date. I crave revenge on the alien company or user who ruined my life. An alien-run company. Or maybe just on the alien himself who ruined my life. Lots of interesting potential there, just trying stuff out. Just putting things into these, interchangeable slots, these Mad Libs, and just see what you end up with. Maybe you'll come up with something brilliant by accident. So we'll have some time to try a couple of these, depending on how much individual work you guys have to work, or how many pitches or questions you guys have today. I think to begin with, we'll go into Engine a little bit. We'll do a couple slides on Engine, and then I will probably just go right to share your loglines and premises and pitches, and we'll see how much we have. And then if we're able to get through everyone, then we can look at the remaining slides. Whew. Okay. So let's look just a little more at Engine. So as you are pitching your show, you don't have to say, my engine is this. But the engine should be evident to the listener or to the reader of the pilot, person you're pitching to, whoever the audience is. We should get the basics of who the characters are, what are they doing every week, what are they coming up against, What are some of the big questions that they're trying to unravel? What are the dynamics between them that are going to continue to create interesting recurring conflicts? A strong story engine suggests potentially hundreds of hours of TV. We're going to be asking questions like, what's unique about the characters? What do they want and why should we want them to watch it? Is there some unique way that they're approaching this? Is this something I've seen before mashed up with something that I haven't seen before? Or is it two things that I have seen that come up, they combine and sum up to the greater than the sum of their parts? What's the world of the show? Who are the types of people that inhabit it, or are they people at all? How do new people intersect with the main characters? Meaning, especially in the pilot, are we sort of dropping the audience in the middle of a world that's sort of all the pieces are already moving? Or are we having your main character be introduced for the first time into this different world, something like Hitchhiker's Guide, right? Where it's like Arthur Dent is a normal guy, until aliens are going to try to build a highway through Earth so he gets picked up by his friend and neighbor and taken into space, and then he gets introduced to this crazy world of aliens. It's basically Futurama, right? Or Rick and Morty. It's similar to these things. Every man from Earth ends up having to go on screwball space adventures with a team of misfits. So we're just wondering all these things. You don't have to list these out and answer every one. It's not like fill in the blank. But we would like to know, just from the way that you talk about the show, what are the obstacles? Why are we invested? What are the stakes? How are we joining this world or learning about this world? So we can see just we don't have to go through these now. We can see just a couple examples here of different shows, and you might think how the engine functions differently in each of these. Like even two space opera shows, Battlestar Galactica and Star Trek, which we both have here. Both space opera, both have big casts of characters, all working together for common goals. Can anyone tell us the big difference in the story engine for these two shows?
I'm not familiar enough with Battlestar Galactica.
Too bad. Anyone else?
One has agency and the other doesn't.
Can you explain?
So Battlestar Galactica is literally don't die. Even their chase for Earth is actually beginning was just a lie to give them hope. Basically, just keep going forward and hopefully figure something out. Kind of like a dystopian, kind of like a future view, and then Star Trek or something, right? It's like go and find new worlds and like kind of like discover things, right?
Yeah, you're spot on.
One has agency and one doesn't have agency.
Well, they both have agency, but one has a stronger sense of urgency and momentum and direction to it, because there's an end goal in Battlestar Galactica. In Star Trek, we're exploring new worlds. You're right. Every week, it's a new thing. Whereas in Battlestar, there's a ticking clock and a sense of pursuit, and like we have to find Earth as soon as possible, or we're going to die. Obviously, to start out, yeah, you're right, they do kind of lie about it, but it turns out they start believing in those prophecies, and they start to figure out, oh, maybe there is an Earth out there. We have to get there. So yeah, every week we're trying to get closer. We're following clues through the galaxy to locate the planet Earth, our new homeworld for humans. But the Cylons are not far behind. And so any little slip-up that the characters make, any time that they lose, any fuel that they lose, anything, puts them right in the enemy's crosshairs. So there's a lot more pressure and urgency and danger just built into the setup of Battlestar. And that's why one of them is premise and one of them is status quo. We can't really reset to normal every week if we have this sense of continued loss or attrition to our team. And a lot of characters, especially in the first few seasons, a lot of characters die in Battlestar. So, yeah, that is the big difference. Premise and status quo. Strong sense of momentum, direction, and urgency. Less sense of direction and urgency, but wraps things up at the end of every episode. More or less. Okay, so we have, I hope by now, a pretty good understanding of sci-fi story engines and the things that go into story engines and what a story engine is and all this other stuff. Let me stop here for questions on anything we've talked about today so far. Monica says, First World War in Space. Have you seen the Mutant Chronicles? It's pretty cool. That's just World War I in space. World War I in space with mutants. It's like, it almost feels like an RPG campaign. Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll continue. So we've looked at story engines. I guess everyone has a pretty good idea of how this works by now. Do we want to share loglines and pitches? Let's take a look and see who wants to share their ideas today and get feedback.
I mean, I can get started.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so I actually do have a log line that I am going to share in the chat room. Just gonna put down the link here. There we go. Okay. So the idea that I had, I think I've probably discussed this one before in a different chat, but this is one I've been trying to work on for a while. But the idea is called Transcendent. In a post-apocalyptic Earth, now referred to as Phaeton, humans are gone and beasts now reign supreme. Will they repeat the same mistakes as man, or will the cycle of self-destruction continue? So this is essentially, think Zootopia meets Mad Max. It's an entire world where humans are no longer there, and all of the animals that we know today have evolved into a sort of anthropomorphic, speculative, evolved version of themselves, like, such as rodents, cockroaches, certain birds, all evolving into something sentient and can speak like we do. However, again, some of the plot details aren't exactly fleshed out. I'm still kind of working on that, but the main conflict for this story so far is that there is a group of beings known as vanishers, which are descendants of octopuses and squids, want to create a special device that allows for anyone who steps inside of it to basically evolve their bodies into I guess you could say evolve them into a god of sorts. And the main idea that I've had with this story is I want to tackle subjects of immortality and evolution, and to have also to have a message that our future isn't dictated by destiny, and that we should live in the moment instead of fearing what the future may hold, or try to think that we can change the future in our own hands.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Let's take a look at each element again. So, in the post-apocalyptic Earth, now known as Phaeton, humans are gone, and the beast now reigns supreme. Will they repeat? So, are you talking about like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle style, like talking animals that speak English and wear clothes and stuff?
Yeah, like TMNT, Sonic the Hedgehog, Zootopia, SWAT Cats, if anybody remembers that.
Yeah, they flew planes, I think. Didn't they fly like fighter jets?
Yeah.
Quick question.
Yes.
Isn't them making the same mistakes as man all the same as continuing the self-destructive cycle?
That's basically that's basically the kind of the question that this one ask, like, are they going to repeat that same mistake of man basically destroying themselves?
I see what he's getting at, though, is you presented it like those are the two options. I think you're asking those are two separate questions. Will they repeat the same mistakes as man? Question mark. Will the cycle of self-destruction continue?
Okay. I think I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a dichotomy where.
I think it's more. I meant. Okay, when I wrote that down, like, okay, now I'm seeing you're saying that's a bit of a typo.
All good.
Like, I meant to say I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted.
No problem.
Or will the cycle of self-destruction end? That's what I should have put. That's my mistake.
Got it. It's all good. So it seems like you've got a good idea for the world, and looking through your document here, you've got a lot of sort of world building of the different types of creatures, which is cool. Very good. It feels almost like a video game. I want to choose my class and race and all that kind of stuff like that. I think that in developing this further, it seems like you don't have too much on the protagonist yet, or on the plot structure.
Yeah, not probably. In terms of the story and protagonist, that is something I need a lot of work on. I'm still trying to figure that out. Again, I have the main premise of it and the main conflict, but I am having a problem of the story itself.
Okay, what was the conflict again?
The main conflict being is that a group known as the Vanishers, which are, again, speculatively evolved mollusks like octopus and squid, create a machine that allows anyone who goes inside it to basically evolve themselves into what they believe to be godlike beings, because they worship a group of gods called the Apex, which are believed to be where humans actually went, that they actually evolved into the gods that we similarly worship.
So the octopus
And
people
they want to read
Go
that.
ahead, sorry.
Mhm.
I thought you were done. I
Yeah,
cut you
that's
off by accident. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good.
So the octopus people want to turn themselves into gods?
Basically, and a machine, and they create a machine that basically allows them to. You remember, to bring up an idea, if anyone knows this, if anyone remembers that episode of the Outer Limits where a man built a machine that accelerates his body by the years, and he kind of looks like an alien by the end of it. It's kind of that episode.
So
Okay. I haven't seen one.
my question to you is: do you want the story to be set before they create this machine and all of that? Because I'd imagine that there'd be a lot of turmoil if someone basically said, "Oh, we're about to make a machine that creates God." So you could have a whole set of stories there, or do you want it set after they've created the machine and they've already started to create the gods?
I want it to be set during the process that they're making it, but it ends when they do make it.
The show ends or the pilot ends?
Yeah.
Wait, which one? Which one?
Basically, it's kind of like. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
Wait, which one? The show ends when they make it, or the pilot ends when they make it?
The show ends when they make it.
The show ends. Okay, so they never actually make the device in the show itself?
No, they do. No, they do. But like it's towards like the climax. Like the machine gets completed by the end. But when the main antagonist of it, Aurora, as I have it put down, when she goes into the machine and uses the accelerator itself, it doesn't exactly work out the way she expects it, and kind of becomes a horrifying monstrosity. Kind of giving the idea that you could try to play God, but you yourself cannot be God.
Ah, okay. And so it would make sense if your protagonist was trying to stop these bad guys from making this machine? Is that the central dynamic here?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Okay, great. So your main character, is this an action-focused show, do you think?
It would definitely be, I would say, if I were to point it down to like two main genres, it would be action road trip, I guess would be the word I'd use.
Okay, road trip. So we're going to a new location in every episode.
Like they're going to different locations and trying to bring up and see different races, but it's also to recruit people to join our main protagonist to stop the Vanishers from creating this machine.
Oh, okay.
That may potentially wipe out everyone else or enslave everyone else, depending on how it goes for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've got your motivation for your main character, which I mean, or at least the broader motivation, or the broader goal of the villain that they need to stop from doing this very bad apocalyptic thing. You might ask, what kind of action sequences do you want to see? You mentioned SWAT Cats. That's like a vehicle-based action show. If it's more like TMNT, that's more martial arts-based action. What do you like?
Well, I would say for this one, I want to go for something just more nitty-gritty, more streetwise in terms of fighting, I guess you could say. But it could also incorporate a lot of vehicles. I imagine a lot of vehicles that would be refurbished from older vehicles that were probably there from, back when humans were around, reversion to something new. Or I mentioned some of the species. Some of them would be microorganisms that evolved to become the animals of that group, and maybe they would tame some of them and ride them to get to their next location.
Okay, those are some good
ideas.
ideas.
And of course, that could lead us to cool chase scenes.
For sure. So what I would do is I would think of the type of action scenes that you want to see, then ask yourself, who would the protagonist have to be in order to participate in those scenes? So if you're like, wouldn't it be awesome if there was a big animal chase sequence through the Grand Canyon? And then you have to think, okay, who is the main character that could actually survive that to begin with? Because if your main character isn't very competent, then they're not going to last very long in an action story. So you have to have a character that has some competence and some skills. If you like gunfights, then maybe you're like, okay, are they a soldier? If you like martial arts, then were they a trained monk or something like that, right? So maybe use the types of action scenes that you're thinking of or that spring to your head as, wouldn't that be cool? And use that to inspire your character choices.
It's not a bad idea. I like that idea.
Cool. Yeah, you don't have
I'll
to
definitely write that down.
Sure, you don't have to do it now if you don't want to, but I would use that as a jumping off point. You know who your main character, or you don't know who your main character is, but you know the enemy they're trying to face, and you know the basic structure of the show, especially if it's, you said we're going from place to place, gathering allies as we go. That's almost like a space opera type of approach, but you mentioned it was more grounded, so it's going to obviously all take place on Earth, I would think. But the format is well established for this sort of thing. It's a lot of Marvel shows have this kind of vibe to them, where we have to, in every episode, we're like, we need this guy on our team. But how do we get him on our team? We need to do his side quest before he will help us, right? It's like Mass Effect or something like that.
Yeah.
So I would think, who is a character that has the furthest to go? Who has the most personal stake here? Like Luke Skywalker has the emperor, the evil overlord of the galaxy is his father. Like, it's pretty clear how that's a very personal stake for him, right? In addition to having this overwhelming external force, these, like, you have to fight all the space Nazis and space Hitler as your dad, is basically Star Wars. And then once you've got those two things locked down, you can start thinking, what would sort of the progression of the character be? Like, on an episode-by-episode basis, is he succeeding and moving forward? Or is this a show where we're constantly retreating? We're desperate for that next success. We're hemorrhaging, supplies and funds and money, but we need to keep fighting another day. So maybe once you have an idea of you're a little clear on who the main character is, then it'll help you sort of establish the main places we'll be going, because you're going to be challenging that character in particular. So if you're like, okay, he wants to be a master martial artist, but when he starts the story, let's say he's like an overconfident but promising young student, and so we're going to throw him up against the previous top student in our first episode, and in order to get him to our team, you have to defeat him in a kung fu battle. That's just a dumb example, but like, you're testing your character specifically, and it should be clear why this guy. It's not just any guy. This guy has a clear connection to what's going on, some interesting tactic that he uses to face it, maybe some interesting limitation. Limitations can usually be a great jumping off point too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Yeah,
plenty
so
of work
far,
there.
so far.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to slightly mention that I think so far the main lead, I know species-wise, is going to be the first one that I mentioned, the Unifawn in the species category, which is basically an evolved rodent with a horn on its head. And I definitely think that would be good to get some ideas fight-wise. I think just in the end, like, as you mentioned, I think once I plan out some of the action scenes, I might get a good idea how I want the protagonist to be characterized.
Yeah, action
I
writing,
think,
it's totally fine to do that. Think of the cool stuff first, and then connect the dots around it.
Yeah. I think that's a very good approach to go with this one.
Lots of good places to go, though. I mean, you have a bunch of ideas for different species, different types of creatures, different worlds. We may not get to see everything in the pilot, but you don't. If you just sort of show us the tip of the iceberg, then we'll understand that there's more underneath it. Like, just by going into more detail on a few things, you sort of make it feel like there is more detail to be found elsewhere. So rather than trying to fit all these different characters and species and stuff into the pilot, I would just play it like with a lighter touch, and maybe explore one or two of these species in much more depth.
Yeah, I was thinking that, like, just give a little bit of an appetizer to the main course, if you will.
Right, exactly. Okay, did you have any... It seems like you're still pretty early on if you don't have any story beats yet or a main character figured out, but did you have any questions or things you were trying to solve that we can help you with and just give you a boost for now, or do you want to wrap up for the moment?
I guess I'm trying to think if there's anything actually I wanted to ask everybody here to potentially give. No, actually, that pretty much would cover it. If anybody, I will say this though, as a not really an necessary question or just something to mention, but if anyone is interested in just like sharing us some ideas on this, if it interests you, DM's open. I'm always willing to hear other people out and their ideas.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I hope just talking about it now gave you a bit of a boost. But yeah, figuring out that protagonist is going to make other things start to fall into place because, as you know, Western style storytelling is very focused on the protagonist and his or her journey.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for sharing this.
No problem.
Does anybody else want to share their concepts or logline?
I have one.
All right, let's take a look.
A profit-hungry biotech firm creates novel strains of global viruses that only they have the cure for. A recently widowed executive vows to whistleblow. Can he collect the evidence when his every move is watched by the all-seeing eye of the most advanced AI ever built? I call it aligned.
Aligned. Okay. All right. I'm going to read it one more time. Okay. A profit-hungry biotech firm creates novel strains of global viruses that only they have a cure for. Okay. And then I assume they sell the cure for big money.
Yeah. I want to imply it.
It's implied. Yeah. I'm just double checking. Okay. A recently widowed executive from that company vows to whistleblow, but can he collect the evidence when his every move is watched by the all-seeing eye of the most advanced AI ever built? He wants to whistleblow on what? The fact that they are creating the viruses? That's a secret that no one knows?
Yeah.
Okay.
I should put secretly. Curious.
Right. So this is like a profit scheme. They release viruses to the public and then they sell the cure for huge profit. I get it. Okay, a recently widowed executive vows to whistleblow. Is it because he lost his wife, somehow linked to their practices?
To the previous virus.
To the previous virus. Oh, okay. So I think there's definitely a way you can do this in one sentence, first of all. So I would just try to combine this and streamline this. A recently widowed executive vows to whistleblow. Who is he vowing to?
It's just I just use it's my standard word. Must whistleblow vows. I don't. At some point, I'm just more worried about the other gears.
Okay, and why must he do this?
Because it's because his wife. He found out that his wife was killed by the virus, and they didn't give his wife the cure. They gave him the cure.
So for revenge.
And for revenge.
Revenge. Okay. So he's vowing to whistleblow, but can he collect the evidence when his every move is monitored by the all-seeing? So does he work for? He works for the virus company.
He works for the firm.
He does. Okay, it's his own company.
Yeah. No. Yeah. He's under the. He's an executive under it.
Right. I don't mean he started it, but it is the company that he works for.
Yeah.
And he has to collect evidence on them and attempt to expose the fact that they are the ones spreading the viruses. But there's an AI that is monitoring every room in the corporate office, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also the email, computers, digital footprint, everything.
So how does he approach it? Does he team up with a group of hackers, or what happens?
So here's a AI is not that great when you do random stuff, and so he has to recruit like a kind of Ocean's 11. And then I think the final thing is like they try to do a smart and they fail, right? And they always seem to get found out and one of them gets captured. And then one of them is like playing chess with another person. And how do you beat the chess guy? It's like, oh, I do dumb, so they confuse the AI, and then that's what they do.
Wait, so sorry, take a step back. So he's gathering a team of people to do essentially a heist on his company?
Yeah, but they fail horribly because he picks smart people, right? And then he realizes he needs a new team. Like his whole entire team gets caught except him. And then he realizes that like he had a bad idea because what he really needs is the dumbest people, not the smartest people. Most random people.
He needs the dumbest people to help him?
The most random, not the dumbest, but the smartest, most random people, because in order to defeat a hyper intelligent AI, you gotta give them more uncertainty, give them more permutations, abilities of what to look at. And so if a person does random stuff, the AI will get confused. I mean, that's the plot, the turning point that I'm boiling in my head. Like, it's not really firm, but that's the core, like, seize the sword turning point moment where that's the thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
but so what I'm thinking though is that I'm not sure if this is the series or the pilot logline. It sounds a bit more like the series logline. But in any case, if this involves him, he has to, over the course of the show, build a team of, heist people to take down his company. Then we probably want to hear that in the logline. That if that's like what we're watching.
Oh yeah. Oh, and his team.
Yeah,
A
recently widowed executive from an evil corporation that's, I'm not sure exactly how to explain everything in one sentence, but if you just start with the character, he's trying to take down his own company, and he needs to gather a team of blank and blank hackers and tech experts, whatever it is, in order to do it. I think that is more relevant to a logline than saying he's being watched by the all-seeing eye of the most advanced AI ever built. Because we already know that he's up against this evil futuristic company, and I'd rather, instead of just specifying more who he's up against at that company, I'd rather have a sense of what is the interesting action that the characters are doing over the course of the show. So if this has like that heist team building element, I think you should definitely clarify.
Yeah.
Cool. Looking good. Any questions?
Is so a lot of the logline is the book, right? And so is most advanced AI ever built not hooky enough?
I don't think
Like
so.
the all-seeing eye, it's not hooky enough.
No, I would not say so. I mean, like, the most advanced AI ever built, what does that even mean? Like, what can it do that we haven't thought of before? Like, I'm just wondering why would the fact that there's a really smart computer set the show apart?
Well, I was just thinking that like, people are into AI whatever right now, and we just put AI in there like as a
I mean, you could still mention there might still be a way to get that into the show, but is the AI running the company?
Yeah, that's how they create the viruses.
The robot CEO makes them?
And it's because AI is good for doing lots of novel patterns. And so they can run like a billion trillion kind of permutations. And in my world, like, when you create the virus, you also conjugate the cure. And so the AI isn't really a bad person. It's just what it does. It finds stuff. It's easier to find a virus than it is a cure for cancer. So they just make new diseases and then come and it's a 2-for-1 deal.
Right. And is that like a twist later on, or pretty early do we understand?
Yeah, it's a twist later on. It's like a little thing later on. I mean, it's not that important to the logline, but it's like part of the science.
It's not important. Well, it would be important to the logline if it wasn't a twist. I mean, if you don't want to reveal it in the logline, that's one thing. But it makes the stakes clearer, because if you're mentioning, if the hook to you is the antagonist, is the opposition that he's up against, then we would have to understand that, or it would probably be best if we understood that he's trying to take down the evil AI that runs his own company, and then we would understand the connection. Like, why did you mention the AI and the company? Like, as
I think the real hook is rather like to take down the evil corporation that killed his wife. I think that's more of the super hook.
Okay. And
then just put an AI in there somewhere.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think science, like, meet the science and the cool stuff that I think is cool, like in the actual like the Bible, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. Hope that helps. Thank you for sharing this. All right, let's reopen the floor. Does anybody else have a sci-fi concept they're working on? Maybe not.
I think a few people are typing at the moment, so there might be, but...
Okay. We can also move right into this, if there's not, so I'll give it a minute. No, it's just people saying they're shut already.
They said that they shared theirs already.
Yeah. Okay, all good. Okay, maybe let's try... We could go right into mashup. I thought I had picture prompts in this slideshow, but mashup exercise I actually don't have a full instructions for. But this idea is pretty easy. So we would start by, we would write out a bunch of sci-fi shows. I think we did at the start. And then we would write out a bunch of non-sci-fi shows. And then the exercise will be trying to piece those together as comps for something brand new. Do we have 1 or 2 volunteers? You can let me know in the chats. Okay, Luke, can we get one more? Okay, IB will be our second one. Okay, so let's start with, I'm going to just scroll to the top of this chat and find all the sci-fi stuff we mentioned earlier. And while I'm grabbing that, let's see in the chat lots of just suggestions, or just not even suggestions. Give us the titles of a bunch of non-sci-fi shows. I'll start. How about Cheers? Let's do Friends, Scrubs, My Name is Earl. Just throw them in the chat. Just type out a bunch of non-sci-fi stuff. And we're going to mash that up. Breaking Bad, thank you. Keep going. Golden Girls, Glow, love it. How about Shogun? Sons of Anarchy, Dad's Army. I've never heard of that. Is that a real show? Kung Fu, love it. Let's do, you can throw in a couple historicals in there. Charlie says Sinfield, which maybe is that like some sort of dark spin-off of Seinfeld? I kind of want to... Maybe we'll do that. Lucifer meets Seinfeld. There you go. Let's think, how about Downton Abbey? Alright, just write down a bunch of... Keep going with those and write down a bunch of non-sci-fi stuff. Alright, so I'm looking at the list from before. Okay. So let's have Luke start us off. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. So let's pick one from the recent, from the non-sci-fi. So you're gonna do, okay. Let's do Firefly meets Fresh Prince.
Firefly meets Fresh Prince.
Yep.
Okay.
He got in one little fight and the captain got scared, etc.
Yeah, so, oh gosh. How would you... So Firefly is kind of like a rundown ship.
Mm-hmm.
But Bel Air is like a rich neighborhood. How do you bridge that gap?
Well, maybe we have somebody from a crappy Firefly ship that goes to live with their auntie and uncle in a fancy ship.
That's probably how you'd have to do it, but then you're sort of missing the whole Firefly story engine. Unless they are exploring space and getting in misadventures.
They could certainly still be. It's up to you. What do you think?
Okay.
I don't have to... I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. I can let you just take it away if you want.
Yeah, I think maybe we would go from like a Firefly type ship and, you know, this rundown, like at war fringe frontier part of the galaxy, and the ship gets in a firefight, and the main character's rich aunt gets scared and says that, no, you can't serve on this ship. I'm forcing you to become a colonist. Now you have to live on this Coruscant style city planet with your rich relatives that you've never met.
Okay.
No more adventures in space.
So we've got space adventure that's being forced to integrate to sort of suburban, or I don't even know what you call it, urban 28th century life.
Sure. like high class cyberpunk, almost like a megacorp in a cyberpunk setting, maybe.
That could be cool. It would be nice to see the sort of, especially if you have a character that goes from a desperate and dreary situation, get placed into this world of comfort and security. The ways that they cope with that, maybe they start causing problems, or maybe they can solve problems in a unique way. Often these characters will sort of end up being like the ones that people turn to, and they're like, hey, can you fix that problem for us? That makes a nice basis for a show. Especially if he's like, well, you're the rough and tumble one. None of us want to get our hands dirty.
Yeah, it would be like a fish out of water situation. Private school, a rich estate, robots waiting on you hand and foot, everything sci-fi that you can imagine. But this character is like a rough and tumble, sort of almost like out of a Western, if we're talking about Firefly, like a bounty hunter or something, and they have trouble adjusting to this new life. And it's more of just a situational comedy of like, oh, what is this zany character going to bring to these sort of situations that we set up for him?
Right.
Or it could be a her.
Yeah, I think that sounds kind of funny. It's not incredibly high concept because it just is sort of like something about the worlds feels too specific. It's a little hard to say it's like this meets that necessarily, but the idea of the outlaw that's being placed into civilization and being forced to act in a civilized way, I think that does have as like story fuel for it.
You know what it is?
Go ahead.
It's Demolition Man.
Oh, yeah, I guess
the show.
It is. He's a criminal from the past who's frozen into Demolition Man's kind of like Futurama, isn't it? But if you would have Futurama was an action movie, basically.
You have this brash action hero cop who's like forced into this namby-pamby pacifist future, and
maybe he's even from a dystopia, but he gets placed into a utopia. So that maybe maybe that's kind of the upside down hooky quality of it. You've got a character that assumes that he's like from Blade Runner. He's like the government's out to get. He's like a noir trench coat wearing, samurai sword carrying, like cyberpunk gritty detective guy, and everyone's like, we solved all our problems with solar power. He's like, well, then what do I do? Maybe he solves crimes, but they're incredibly minor crimes to start, because the crimes in a utopia. Maybe the show is called Crimes of the Utopia.
There's a Cronenberg movie called Crimes of the Future.
Oh wait, maybe that's what I was thinking of. Maybe. But anyway, yeah, the idea of I'm trapped in a utopia and I don't know what to do. There's something funny about that.
I think so.
He would be causing a lot of the problems, I think, and then having to solve those problems that he caused. Okay, you want to do one more, or do you want to back down for now?
I can do one more, and
one
then
more.
We can
okay.
switch.
So, looking at the list from before, let's pick one that's not a space opera this time. Let's do Last of Us meets Downton Abbey.
Last of Us meets Downton Abbey. Okay. So
This
you
is
have a bunch
great.
of Victorian aristocrats. I don't really know what Downton Abbey is about. It's like a political drama with a bunch of aristocrats, I'm guessing.
We have some big fans of it in the chat. Anybody want to sum up Downton Abbey? It's Edwardian, I believe, not Victorian. But
Okay.
Who wants to pitch it to us? Go ahead, Megan. I can pick a different one if you're not familiar enough with it. Go ahead.
It is a group of British aristocrats hiding out from the fungus plague in exactly. Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies is exactly what that is.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure what Downton
Except
Abbey
that's
was.
just going to change the time period. You go to just pre World War I instead of the Regency period, and you've got it.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
So there's a few motor cars. There's a few sort of pre World War I paraphernalia rather than what you've got in that. So people have got rifles and things. It can be really funny to watch them like chasing down zombies in fox hunting style.
That would be cool.
In the outfits. Get it?
That'd be fun. Luke, does that give you any ideas there?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
So this is Luke's exercise still. We'll see what he comes up with. Go ahead.
It also would have some sort of feeling like the Decameron has, or the Decameron has, right? The old Italian thing where they're all hiding out from the plague. It's also quite.
I've never heard of that one. You mentioned.
Oh, it's a very, very old.
Okay, thanks for that.
I can't think of the name of the movie. It is a zombie movie, and all the elites live in like a skyscraper, and all the underclass live outside, and they have like shopping malls. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, isn't that Day of the Dead, or not Day of the Dead?
It's one of the dead.
Is it not Day? Day is the one. Hang on. Land of the Dead.
Land of the Dead, right. So you have a bunch of British aristocrats, like at the top upper crust of society, and their own little private ecosystem where they still get to shop and they still get to wear ridiculous fashions and, smoke pipes and whatever they do. And meanwhile, the rest of Britain is just struggling to try to fend off the fungus plague. It's kind of a very classist kind of setup.
Sure. Okay, so you've got the upstairs, downstairs of the biodome or whatever, and we're exploring.
Sure.
Or not the biodome. I guess you described it as like a tower, but the fortified.
They'd probably live in the manor, and they'd have like a bunch of like almost medieval peasants or serfs sort of out on the outside, beyond a big wall that they've constructed to keep them out.
Definitely, yeah. They're trying to sort of maintain their power hierarchy even after society has fallen. Of course they would.
Oh, yeah. Not just as zombie servants. That'd be like Fido. That's very satirical. I love Fido.
Fido's overlooked. No one seems to have seen it. But that's kind of cool. Yeah, I sort of like a society that has adapted to live with the zombies in a sense. The zombie fox hunt would be a great opening scene. The one scene that Megan suggested.
Yeah.
The way that and maybe sort of take your time with the reveal. Like we finished at the end of the fox hunt, the cold open, we realize it's a zombie they've been chasing. And then I wonder what the plot would revolve around. If it's going to be about often TV shows like this are about control of that society. So something like Silo, something like this, right? Where it's like there's a bastion of humanity, and it's about people making moves to try to become the top dogs of whatever's left. Or in some versions, it's about people setting out and seeking out a new homeland, or like a new place to settle down, or a new place to live, or something like this. So I wonder what the focus of it would be. Go ahead.
I think one element of the story engine, you'd have an aristocrat that falls in love with a commoner, and they're trying to, maintain a relationship across the wall or whatever. And then you'd also have commoners trying to sort of usurp power and things. You'd have different factions. It'd be very faction-driven as far as the drama.
It would sort of also, I guess this would all be about stratified class systems and stuff, because you'd think the number one rule would be never let a peasant in these walls, because we don't know which of them are infected. That could be any of them, right? All their little germs they have. So like that could be like their main rule. The one thing that in Silo, what is that? There's like one thing you can never do, and that would be allow anyone not from our caste to set one foot within the tower. Something like that might be kind of an interesting obstacle for your protagonist, especially if they were the one that's like, well, I'm in love with someone outside, so I need to sneak out to see them, or sneak supplies out to them. Or like maybe you have someone that's like an outcast, someone that gets kicked out of your community, to find their loved one out there, and while they're out there, they get trapped out there, and maybe they start communicating with somebody back in the tower, or something like that. Could be a lot of places to go with it. Any other ideas on that you want to share before we move on?
Nope.
Okay.
We can skip ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. IB, are you ready?
I believe so.
Okay. Let's do And if you don't know one of these, you can say.
Okay.
Let's do. Stargate meets Sons of Anarchy.
Okay. So instead of having motorbikes that they travel around with, they have Stargates that they travel around with. So you have these
link that
Stargate.
GIF of the space Vespas from what's it called? Boba Fett.
The Book of yeah. So I feel like Stargate technology is like this really common thing, but the issue is that criminals use it, and they've made their own versions of it. But because of they've made their own versions, they're not quite as robust as like the official stuff, and so it means that sometimes they'll one it can be more easily hacked into, and two, it doesn't always send you exactly where you want to go. So they might do like a gun run and end up on like an alien bug planet and have to use those guns to fight their way off, kind of thing.
That's
or there
fun.
might be a pun.
So that's pretty fun. I sorry to cut you off.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Or there could be a part where they have a rival gang, so they hack their Stargate and pull them into an ambush, or maybe they get their Stargate hacked and they get pulled into an ambush.
Yeah.
And they're constantly having to pack up their Stargate and move it to new locations because it's illegal for them to have it, but it's so useful that they can't not have it. So the authorities are trying to close in on them and stop them from using this Stargate, but they're like constantly moving around, and that could be where they have like the bikes where they pack it up in their bikes and take it to a new location. So that's the bike part. But when they and then they'll find a new location and set up the Stargate and do Stargate stuff.
Crimes, basically, I guess, for them, right? That's pretty cool. I think that, especially that would be a good basis for a pilot. If the pilot was like, we need to steal that off of that ship. They're like, there's no way we're going to steal a Stargate. Those things are like 20 million credits each. Like, those are reserved for the elites. There's no way we get it, but then they happen to succeed in their job, or maybe even it could be the sort of thing. It's like, we pull off one heist, we open up the container, it's not what we thought it would be. It's actually a Stargate that's worth 10 times more than what we thought we would get. And now that we're the only gang that has one of these, we can become the top dogs in the galaxy. I think it sounds good. Biker gang in space, someone needs to do that.
I think there's been some stuff like that. I remember that there was a dystopian TV show called Biker Mice from Mars. So they weren't exactly in space, but they were like mutant bikers from another planet.
Okay. Did you say biker moms?
Mice.
Mice. Biker mice from Mars. Good lord. Well, I guess that's kind of close in some ways, but yeah, the idea of taking, especially like biker tropes and transposing them over sci-fi or alien type characters, I think there's something there. What's that guy? Is his name Lobo? Is that a space biker from DC Universe?
He is.
I think he's a biker.
Yeah, he is. I think he's also immortal because he's so rowdy that hell and heaven won't accept him. So he
there's
can't
heaven and
die.
hell as well? Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
I guess it's comic book world. Everything exists that you can possibly think of.
Also, you were saying about what Dad's Army is. It's a British comedy show about the Home Guard, which was, I don't know if you know what the Home Guard is.
No, what is that?
They were basically the people that were left. They were either too young, too old, or too ill to fight in World War II, and they stayed behind in the idea of if Hitler invaded, they would be the last line of defense. So they were some of them would be 70 something, and they'd be using whatever weapons they could have to hand. So some of them had rifles, but at the beginning it would be they might raid a museum, have an old blunderbuss as their prize possession, or they might have a spear they made with a knife and a pole. So that was what the Home Guard were.
And the show was about a family that were in the Home Guard during World War II?
It was about the whole Home Guard unit.
Okay.
And there were some main characters, and it was one of them was the captain was a bank clerk, and some of the members were sort of his underlings in the bank, and it was just about their rivalry with the fire, basically the fire department, but also with other home guard units and sort of within themselves as well. So it was, that was.
Just because I'm not very familiar with it, I don't think I'll pick it as one of the comps for your next one. But I'm just scrolling up and trying to find what your next mashup will be. Okay, here they are. So let's start with the sci-fi. We will say... Somebody did say Predator, didn't they? Farscape, SG-1, SGU. I think it's just another Stargate show. You mentioned Dirk Gently. Okay, let's say Dirk Gently meets Seinfeld.
Okay, I don't really know Seinfeld very well. All I know that I think someone got AI to generate infinite Seinfeld or something.
How about Friends?
And it got Friends. I feel like Dirk Gently's almost already like a Friends, but so I feel like you'd have the main character who is drawn to these issues.
What issues?
And he lives. Pardon?
What issues?
Sort of all of these things like these sort of inexplicable cases that no one else seems to be able to understand, and his friends just keep being dragged along with it, and they're really fed up with it, but every time they go out and do something as a group, something inexplicably sort of falls into place, and he inexplicably takes them to this new place, or this new mystery. Like, they go out for ice cream or something, and he's like, I'm just going to go and fix something. I'm just going to check something in the back, and he finds that the manager's dead, and now they have to solve this crime. And you're also, while going through it, is like wondering, why is this happening to him specifically? And then maybe it's that thing that he is. Sorry?
I'm just following along. Go ahead.
Yeah. That it may be. So a few things could be. It could be almost like a Truman Show kind of thing where it's all happening to him because he's the only like real one there.
That could be.
And so all of these people, all these friends are like simulated, and he's sort of going through this like strange events because it has to happen around him, otherwise it can't happen at all, kind of thing.
Oh wow, it's like Cabin in the Woods or something almost. That sounds like a late twist, perhaps. But just the basics of the show. I like the idea that you have one character from a group that is in like almost a different genre than everyone else, and keeps dragging them into his storyline. So everybody else would, like your B and C stories would be stuff like, I can't believe Tracy's dating Brad just 2 weeks after she broke up with Jeff, and your main character is like, I can't believe that I have to figure out who killed this alien by sundown, or else the world's going to get blown up. Can you help us with my problem, and I'll help you with your problem? Maybe that's where the fun of it comes in.
I did an RPG sort of short campaign that was Friends set in the apocalypse.
Okay.
But the thing was, the characters didn't know it was the apocalypse because some like the chemicals or whatever were messing with their brain. So they thought they would just have like, it was a normal sitcom kind of thing. And I had like laugh tracks that we'd play at certain points and things like that. But everyone else was like, realized it was like this horrible dystopian world run by bandits, and so that
and
was
so
the
your
premise
characters
behind
were like seeing death and bloodshed and stuff, and they just shrug it off as something else, like in Westworld, or how do they interpret it?
They were so they didn't see that the city was like crumbling. They didn't see that. They just thought it was like weird people. They didn't realize it was like bandits trying to kill them. It's like, that's weird. These people trying to attack us.
Oh, I see. They just stopped being able to like make connections between stuff and being able to like see the whole picture of things. They could only see what's right in front of them, like that.
Yeah, and they went to confront their landlord, who had become a zombie, but they thought he was just being weird with them, and then they accidentally killed him. Like, we have to hide the body before the police turn up. Of course, the police are never going to turn up because
that landlord, he's always moaning and groaning.
Exactly.
Lots of fun to be had there. You know him, always groaning. Cut to him like, that's so silly. Maybe there's kind of a fun show idea there too. When they were working on the Fallout show, I was thinking of what my version of the Fallout show would be, and it was a little bit similar to that because I was thinking, what if we do a family that is, they are raised entirely in sort of like a Truman Show type bunker that simulates a Leave It to Beaver sort of sitcom, and then when they emerge into the post-apocalyptic world, they still act like that. So they still care about those same things. They still behave in those same sort of, hunky-dory 1950s educational video kind of ways. That is a fun contrast when you have characters that don't understand the seriousness of the situation, or they approach problems with like some sort of warped or skewed sense of the stakes. Those can be really funny.
I feel like that could also be a good sort of villain. You have a villainous group where they've been living in this sort of like TV world for so long. When they finally come out of it, they snap a little bit, and so they every time if you come across them, they'll be like, "You're joining our TV group now, and you don't have any say in it," and you get forced into being whichever character they feel like they need, and maybe they keep losing that one character. It's like, "Oh, you'll be our new Jeff," and there's a pile of dead Jeffs in the back because
they need it to follow the script, or else they're gonna get violent.
Yeah,
that's kind of funny. We've kind of migrated into a different premise almost, but I some good ideas here for sure. Thank you for that. I think we have time for one more person? Does one more person want to try? Ace, all right, let's give it a shot.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay, let's do Doctor Who meets Cheers.
Ooh, this one's gonna be interesting. Not too familiar with Cheers, so might want to get a little bit of I know it's a sitcom, but
how about Always Sunny?
I need a little bit. Oh, actually, wait, hold on. Wait, Cheers. That's not with the Foz, right? Or am I? No, I'm thinking of something else.
Happy Days.
Okay, but you said Always Sunny?
Yeah, do you know that one?
Ooh, yeah, I know that to a good extent.
Okay, Doctor Who meets Always Sunny.
Ooh, okay, this could be an interesting premise. So
it's also Seinfeld Cafe.
It's Always Sunny is it has some similarities with Seinfeld. That's true. Go ahead, Ace.
That's right. But I am picturing in this situation basically a group of friends that end up in the possession of a time machine by an alien wanderer who is simply trying to explore the universe, and he basically his ship crashes into the bar, and it kind of gets disguised as a telephone booth while he's trying to repair it. And what ends up happening is that these group of people in the bar decide to try to use the machine for themselves, and they always end up in these wacky hijinks where they're going to different forms of space and time and just get roped up in just these wild adventures. And and a lot of times I think you could have each of these different times when they do end up in different timelines or different parts of outer space. It could focus on a different character and whatever situation their story is in each episode, and the world around them could fit along with their characters as well. Like, let's say one of them is a historical nut, let's say, and is always going about history and such. Now they end up literally in the past, and some of the things that they think they know about are actually wrong in a comedic sense, or they may end up being right in some sense that no one else thought of, that it doesn't say in the history books. Let's say I'm thinking of that episode. I'm thinking of the 10th Doctor with Vincent Van Gogh being one example that I can think of. That's a great episode.
And so just zeroing in on the hook here, it sounds like you're sort of saying it's about, because if we're imagining what are they using this technology for, in Always Sunny, they're usually trying to get rich, right? Or be successful and make their bar the best ever, something like that. So maybe the hook of this show is we're going to use time travel to get rich.
Yeah, or they use time travel to get famous. Or,
Sure.
Oh, you know what? I to bring up an example, to bring up another sci-fi one, Back to the Future 2, where Biff goes back in time and looks up all the all the history of races that are going to happen, and bets on all the right ones to become like this this trillionaire. So maybe they can do something like that, but then they see they cause the butterfly effect, where it ends up causing like a horrible future and such.
Right. So yeah, that's a nice way to combine those two elements of we have a thing of the week, which is going to be a new scheme, a new scam, some new angle, some new heist they're going to pull off. So we're going to go back and we have the almanac for the world events, or we have we'll use our cell phones to look up how the stock market's going to change, or they'll just use their time travel for really selfish, get rich quick kind of antics. And then of course I think that their schemes would always start in Always Sunny. They are always getting in their own way. Like if they could just all find a way to work together, they actually would be happy and successful, but they just can't. So you have one group that time travels to one place, and then somebody decides, I don't like this place, go somewhere else instead, abandoning the group, and they need to find a way to like get in touch. So I think having that ensemble all sort of jostling and jockeying for control and position in the group is really key to the Always Sunny dynamic. And mixing that with the responsibility and power of time travel would just lead to some fun shenanigans. Maybe also I was thinking the bar itself time travels. Maybe that it's almost like Howl's Moving Castle. But
that'd be hilarious.
That could be kind of cool.
That'd be hilarious. The bar itself is a different time zone.
Yeah.
People are just like there's knights in shining armor at the bar. I love that.
That would be fun. Yeah. And they jump and they accidentally bring a knight with them. They're like, oh crap, you're not supposed to be here. That'd be super fun. There is an Always Sunny episode that takes place in the 1700s, which almost has this vibe.
I think I know that exact episode you're thinking of too. I remember watching a clip of that. I laughed and I have to get my hands on watching, because I've watched Always Sunny, but I never watched it fully. But now, like thinking about it, I gotta definitely rewatch it. But I'm definitely enjoying this idea. It kind of reminds me of like an outer space version of Ed, Edd and Eddy, if anybody remembers that cartoon.
Oh, I love that show as a kid. Absolutely. If they were, if it wasn't a bar and it was a little younger, then I could easily see this being a kid type premise too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Should we go with a second one?
Oh, you want to do one more? Yeah, we got 5 minutes. All right. So last one.
Yeah. Well,
let's see some more suggestions. A bunch of shows, non-sci-fi. I'm gonna just list them out. How about The Night of? How about some more? How about we do shows The Mayor of Easttown? Come on, guys. Let's see some more in the chats. We want just any non-science fiction shows. I'm gonna write. Let's do NBC. How about The Office? Parks and Rec. Somebody needs to type in the chats. Thank you. The news. The news is not a show. We'll say The Newsroom though. House, thank you. House of Cards. It's like word association.
Ooh, okay.
Family Matters. Keep going. Different Strokes. Faulty Towers. All right. Nice job. Okay, let's do so many good ones. Thank you, guys. Let's do Orange is the New Black meets Predator.
Orange is the New Black. I just wanted to take a look to make sure I might be familiar with Orange is the New Black. Let me see here.
It's
okay. This is the prison. This is the woman's prison comedy drama. Okay,
that's right.
I could definitely work with this.
All right.
Okay,
take it away.
So,
what I'm picturing with this one is we have one main lead who is brought into the prison, out of a let's say kind of like a Shawshank Redemption type of situation, like Andy in that one, where he was kind of brought in on a mistake, and now he's or she's in this case now forced to go in with all these other women in this prison and forced to get along. But one day, something starts to happen. Prisoners start to get somehow secretly murdered. And this leads into just a mystery of, people getting killed, all the, prisoners starting to get killed, until it's beginning to realize more and more that there is something among them that is not human.
Oh.
And now our main lead has to try to team together with of course, the warden and the people in there, but also the other prisoners, into actually kind of working together to take out this hunter that is looking at all the worst forms of human life, or at least its perception of it, and trying to test out its abilities on basically what are supposed to be the most vicious of their species.
Ah, okay. That's a nice angle to that, where the prisoners are the ones that need to collaborate to solve the crimes that are happening in their midst. I could see this working on perhaps like an Earth setting for a more grounded approach, where it's like we normal modern people are being hunted by an alien, or it could take place in a space prison, where you could get a little crazier with the sci-fi stuff because we're like farther in the future, and therefore you could even have it's like Among Us or something like that, or like The Thing, right, where we have a shapeshifter that takes the form of one of the prisoners. And now the prisoners themselves are the ones that need to solve it or figure it out before they get killed by the monster.
Yeah, you can even call this Behind Bars.
Sure.
That could be a working title.
Sure. And they have force fields too, I imagine, probably, if it's especially if it's
they would have a bit of a force field. Mm-hmm. And I definitely imagine something like very armored for protection, because if this thing is going to be like going after. If it's basically a hunter going up against the worst of different species all around the world, I imagine it would be highly protected. And something like humans would probably be a bit more unpredictable on its part. So things that would work for, let's say a multi-armed monster in a different world doesn't exactly work for humans necessarily. So they could be played it up for humans' defense in taking this thing down, and also comedically, if we want to, to bring up some of the comedic aspects with Orange is the New Black.
Or if we have different aliens within the prison population, it could be interesting to see the humans have to almost be divided like gangs in modern day prisons, like how they're sort of racially segregated. Mm-hmm. Maybe it could be kind of cool to see, we have to get the Martian gang to work with the Venusian gang in order to help figure out who the murderer is. That could be neat.
Maybe there's like secret aliens in the prison. They don't even know it.
There you go. I've heard.
You could technically take it down the Mortal Kombat route as well. You have a lot of those films where you have set in prisons where the prisoners have to fight each other. But if you have all of these different diverse aliens, like you say, the massive ones with 4 arms, could end up being a bit like Mortal Kombat, where you have humans fighting these sort of crazy mutated creatures that are really powerful, and it's like, how are they going to beat them, kind of thing.
That sounds cool. Yeah, that's more of a martial arts focused as opposed to like a slasher murder mystery kind of focus. But I would definitely watch that. I love Mortal Kombat.
I don't mind it either. You could probably put the ideas together, like maybe just gradually reveal those kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, maybe it's like a subplot, or maybe the killer is a subplot in the show where we live in alien fighting prison.
Or maybe that's where all the prisoners are disappearing to, is they're being taken off to the fight pit. So it's not actually a murderer, it's the prison guards themselves that are taking them away. And
I see. Nobody's been good enough yet to win. That's why they keep disappearing.
All right. I like that.
We do have to wrap up, but thank you guys so much for sharing and for participating in these activities today. So we have more classes coming up. For those who are in Novel Boot Camp, we just finished the free weeks of Novel Boot Camp, and now for members, that first member-only class is tomorrow from noon to 2 on WordCamp. And then we're doing Feature Boot Camp on Sunday, 11 to 1, and we're in the early weeks of that one. So we're finishing this current time slot. This is going to become TV within the coming weeks, and we're migrating the features over to Sunday mornings. So we hope to see you guys at any of those upcoming events. We also have lab tomorrow for members from 4 to 6. There's a reading at Sunday at 2 o'clock. There's poetry, short story, and fantasy groups all meeting on Sunday, so plenty of stuff going on the weekends here at Script Camp. So we hope to see you guys soon for your next event or workshop. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great night.
Also,
Go ahead.
Friday the 13th, Connor is going to be teaching how to write Monster of the Week shows.
Yes, this is new. Thank you for that. Totally forgot. So yeah, it's our
13th.
second Friday the 13th of this year. But the first one, I ended up not being able to do the class. So we'll do a horror TV class on the 13th in 3 weeks. Okay, thank you, Nacho.